BC Premier David Eby says the Bald Range wildfire likely won't be the last significant fire that British Columbia sees this summer, and it's giving people a glimpse into what the consequences of climate change can look like.
There is international interest in the scale of fires, national interest to know about the seriousness of climate change, of drought, of the kinds of fires we're facing.
BC isn't alone, of course. Ontario faced its own explosive wildfire crisis back in July, and the devastating effects of climate change can be seen globally, with Europe reporting thousands of heat wave deaths so far this summer. In Asia, Typhoon Dolphin became one of China's most significant weather events in recent years. And as scientists warn that climate change has made typhoons and others more likely to affect East Asia. For some context on all this, I am joined by Katharine Hayhoe. She's the Global Chief Scientist for Nature Conservancy and a distinguished professor at Texas Tech University. Good morning, Katharine. Thanks so much for taking time.
Thank you for having me.
What is your reaction when you see right now the catastrophic wildfires raging in the Okanagan in BC?
It breaks my heart. I've been studying the impacts of climate change on wildfires for over 2 decades, but it's one thing if you see it on your computer screen or on the paper that you're writing in front of you. It is a completely different thing when you see the lives and the faces of people being affected.
Indeed, and as you say, scientists have been warning about extreme weather events due to human-caused climate change for decades. So how is what we are seeing again this year, this summer, lining up with the expectations, the warnings, really?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, we know that we've always had extreme weather. In fact, I'm speaking to you from the Georgian Bay area, and right here on this peninsula I'm on, it was burned to the ground 100 years ago. So we know that we've always had typhoons, hurricanes, wildfires, heat waves, floods, and more. But we know also that climate change is loading the weather dice against us. It's as if we've always had these weather dice and we had a chance of rolling a double six naturally. But as the climate changes, it's sneaking in and it's changing more of the numbers on our dice to sixes, and it's even giving us some sevens. So that's why we're seeing more frequent, more extreme, and more dangerous events, because climate change is loading the dice against us, and that puts us all at risk.
And Katharine, in these cases, for example, what are the underlying climate conditions? How have they changed that fuel these kinds of fires?
Mm-hmm. There are a number of things at work here. First of all, especially out west, our warmer winters no longer kill off the beetles that can destroy up to millions of acres of trees. And so there's more dead wood now because of those beetles than there was before. But we also see that as snowpack is reduced in the winter and as the winter season is shrinking, that dries out the soils and lengthens the fire season. And then when it comes to fire weather, climate change has more than doubled the frequency of hotter, drier fire weather across Canada. And across northern Alberta and BC, we are also seeing more frequent lightning strikes, which is often the reason why these fires begin. So there's no one factor. There's a whole conglomeration of factors interacting with the human choices that we make in terms of accidental ignitions or how we manage our forests. And it's all coming together to produce the growing catastrophes that we see now year after year.
And how much at the root of this is increasing carbon emissions, a failure to bring those down significantly globally, but also here in Canada?
Well, a study a few years ago showed that 37% of the area burned across Western North America in the last 20 years was due to the emissions of just 88 corporations, the carbon emissions from 88 oil and gas companies. So you can imagine when you factor in the whole rest of the world, the impact that that's having. In Canada, our forests flipped from being a net sink, taking up carbon from the atmosphere, to being a net source, producing more carbon into the atmosphere about 20 years ago. And what's happening is that carbon is building up in the atmosphere, essentially wrapping an extra blanket around the planet. And just as you and I would, if someone snuck into our room at night and put an extra blanket on us, we'd be like, hey, I don't need this blanket, I'm already quite warm. That's what's happening to our planet, and that is the root cause of the worsening extremes that we see.
So, Katharine, you're a Canadian, but you live and work in the U.S., so you're very familiar with the pressure and the tensions between these two countries. The response in this country, the Prime Minister is working to increase fossil fuel exports here, but also to capture the emissions through carbon storage and capture. Is that realistic?
At this point, investing in the fossil fuel industry over the long term, 20 plus years, is like investing in horses and buggies when they're already turning cars off the assembly line. The future is clean energy. China installed more solar last year than the rest of the world put together. We are grateful for the benefits that fossil fuels have brought us over the last 200 years in the Industrial Revolution, but it is past time to move on, not just because we have a better, more affordable way to get energy, but because the risks and the impacts are overwhelming. I mean, the cost of wildfire smoke on our health alone is of the same magnitude as the most positive estimated benefits of the pipeline. So you have to do a full cost benefit analysis these days, and increasingly the costs of using fossil fuels are getting bigger and bigger every year.
Katharine, we've heard scientists early this year predicting a super El Niño event. El Niño is a hard thing for people to wrap their head around, but we are seeing impacts of extreme weather events. What will you be watching for in the months just ahead?
Well, an El Niño is one of the natural cycles in the Earth atmosphere system that tries to restore the balance of heat between the ocean and the atmosphere. But as you can imagine, with this ever thicker blanket we're wrapping around the planet, it is very difficult and basically impossible for natural cycles to restore the balance. And so what we're seeing this year is we're seeing an extremely strong super El Niño, which means that it is moving massive amounts of heat out of the ocean into the atmosphere. And you might say, well, the atmosphere is already plenty hot. Why is it doing that? It's because over 90% of the heat being trapped by this blanket we're wrapping around the planet, it's been going into the ocean. So the El Niño is moving all of this heat from the ocean into the atmosphere. And what that means is we are going to be seeing a spike in global temperature this year, and we are going to be seeing even more extreme weather disruptions around the world.
Before I let you go, you write a lot about hope in the climate debate and the pressures in climate. What would you say to the people in Summerland who had to flee at a second's notice from a raging fire? What is the hope that we need to grasp at?
Well, first of all, what I would say to them or to anyone facing disaster is, what can I do and how can I help? When you're facing a disaster, you can't be told the world is going to get better, because the world looks absolutely catastrophic at that moment, and you're just grateful to escape with your family and your pets. But what we do know is that climate action long-term will build a better world. So it isn't just the apocalyptic scenarios that we're running away from. It is the possibility of a cleaner, healthier, safer world. And when we talk not only about the risks we must avoid, which are becoming increasingly obvious, but when we also talk about the benefits of action and what we will gain by it, those two pieces, as I think of them as the heart and the hands, why it matters to me and what I'm worried about, but also what we can do to build that better world, put those two together, and we do have the equation for a solution.
Katharine, I can't thank you enough. Very clear analysis. I appreciate your time on this summer morning for you. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you for having me.